If the Joker wasn't obsessed with Batman, the entire DC universe would be destroyed. The Clown Prince of Crime has been a particularly psychopathic thorn in the side of Batman for as long as anyone in Gotham City can remember. Call them what you will, rivals, nemesis, or arch-enemies. Whatever name is ascribed to their relationship, it's clear that the destinies of the Bat and the Clown are intimately intertwined. The Joker has shown time and again that he is hopelessly and utterly obsessed with the Dark Knight in ways that only his twisted, compulsive mind can fathom. And while this means that Batman must contend again and again with one of the most horrific and dangerous minds on the planet, could the Joker's unmitigated fixation on the Caped Crusader actually be saving the rest of humanity from drawing the Harlequin of Hate's ire? Today, we here at Plot Armor Comics are going to be diving deep into the psyche of this maniacal mass murderer in search of the answer to one terrifying question. What would happen if the Joker simply put aside his compulsion to torment Batman? What if the Ace of Knaves freed himself from that unrelenting desire to tease, taunt, and otherwise bedevil the world's greatest detective? If released from his greatest infatuation, what would the Joker do? What would be his motivations? And who, if anyone, could stop this frightful force of nature from doing just about anything he pleased? Number 1. The Joker's power. Let's take a look at just what makes the Joker so indomitable, even for one of the world's greatest heroes. After all, few have even come up against Batman as many times as the Joker, and even fewer of those can say they've actually bested the Bat. To lend some perspective, Batman has handily defeated more than his fair share of superpowered brutes, bullies, and black hats during his time as Gotham's protector. Over the years, the Caped Crusader has gone up against gargantuan immortal zombies, supercharged terrorists with armies of goons, and almost all of the most dangerous assassins on the planet. All have eventually fallen before Batman's raw power, tactical brilliance, and sheer force of will. And yet, one super powerless man in a clown costume somehow always seemed to force the world's greatest detective into the most treacherous scenarios. How does he do it? Well, there are many reasons why the clown is considered the greatest and most terrible foe Batman has ever gone up against. Perhaps the most well-known reason is the Joker's famed unpredictability. Trying to anticipate the Joker's next move is just about impossible, because most of the time, even he doesn't know what he'll do next. While most of Batman's rogues gallery have clear desires, motivations, and goals, the Joker has none of these. His whims vary wildly from minute to minute. There's no telling what he might do, where he might strike, or even when he may appear next. In fact, as Alfred once wisely noted, part of what makes the Joker such a prodigious villain is his patience and his knowledge that the best time to strike is when your opponent at least suspects you. "He stayed away so long this time," Alfred once told Bruce. "I imagine I allowed some small part of myself to become hopeful we'd seen the last of him." But the Joker's power comes from far more than simply his unpredictable nature. The Ace of Knaves loves nothing better than a good contradiction. The Joker is an unforeseeable loose cannon and also one of the foremost plotters the DC Universe has ever seen. This is the man who once killed Robin, paralyzed Batgirl, and nearly drove Jim Gordon insane in the span of a single night. The Joker once even managed to take down each and every member of the Bat family individually, bringing them together just to gas them all in one fell swoop. And we've still just scratched the surface of the Joker's many ingenious master plans. Chalking up all of these accomplishments to simple volatility is far too simplistic. He has the brain of a mastermind hidden within the mind of a madman, which makes the Clown Prince of Crime's attacks both impossible to prepare for and nearly hopeless to defend against. All of this, paired with a complete disregard for human life or safety, including his own, makes the Joker the most twisted and sadistic enemy Batman has ever had the misfortune to go up against. But what if the Joker's aspirations ever rose beyond simply making Batman's life a living hell? Number 2. Joker is tired of Batman. Though the Joker has occasionally looked past his pointy-eared arch-nemesis and brought his unique brand of terror outside of Gotham's borders, the Joker has rarely been able to divorce himself from his obsession with Batman. But before we can decide what the Joker might actually attempt if he were no longer concerned with the Caped Crusader, we need to understand how separating himself from the Bat would alter the Joker's mind. This is a decades-old rivalry we're talking about here. Simply lifting the Joker out of Gotham City and dropping him in Metropolis wouldn't do the character justice. Though he might not have rational goals or aspirations, the Joker is nothing if not calculated. He's even on several occasions laid out just exactly what he believes to be his guiding principles. Once, while Batman was wounded at his mercy deep in the winding labyrinth of caves beneath Gotham, the Joker told Bruce,
I'm the one who laughs, you get it? I've always been there, laughing at you, at all of you, at the great joke that you think your lives have meaning. Even when I was in disguise, wearing makeup and red, I said so. But then you came swooping in, transformed into something as crazy as me, bigger than them, and you fought me on it. And for a long time, the joke was on me, wasn't it? Fighting for meaninglessness, but giving meaning by virtue of the fight. Ha!
And there we have it, folks. It turns out Joker, at his core, is a man trapped between two worlds, two disparaging beliefs. His belief that life is fundamentally devoid of meaning on the one hand, and the incessant need to prove to everyone around him that he's right on the other. Spurred into action by his need to be understood, and yet harboring such terrible and sadistic beliefs that no one could ever truly understand him. It would be tragic if the clown wasn't so hell-bent on torturing, maiming, and otherwise inflicting pain on just about everyone he'd ever met. However lost he might seem, though, Batman sparks something profound in the Joker. In the Bat, he sees not only a mind equal to his, but someone who might just understand him if pushed to the very edge. This is why the Joker spends all his time poking and prodding at the Dark Knight detective. He hopes and yearns for the day that Batman might finally be pushed over the edge and see the world how the Joker sees it. Freeing himself from the burden of proving to the Bat that the world is devoid of meaning would change him surely, but what would he become? However, rather than become latched onto a single target as he did with the Bat, the Joker would find himself adrift. With so many targets to choose from, where would the Joker turn? Who would find themselves in the firing line? How exactly would the Joker's life look without the big bad Bat? Number 3. The Joker destroys the world. One of the most popular and insightful stories of the Joker going rogue comes to us from the Injustice Gods Among Us series, in which Joker decides he's had enough of being beaten by the Bat and decides to take a crack at the Man of Steel instead. In perhaps one of the most storied Joker plots in recent memory, the clown kidnaps a newly pregnant Lois Lane and holds her captive aboard a nuclear submarine. This, of course, sets off a frenzied search among the world's heroes to find Superman's wife as quickly as possible and ensure her safety. When Superman finally locates the Joker, he wrests the submarine from the depths of the ocean and tears his way inside. Once aboard, though, the Joker's plan begins in earnest. Superman begins inhaling a specialized compound of scarecrow gas laced with kryptonite that sends him immediately to his knees. Once the last son of Krypton was able to stand, he sees Doomsday, a creature he feared more than any other, before him. Not wasting a moment, Superman launched into the upper atmosphere, but as soon as he reached a safe height, his mind began to clear from the fog of the fear toxin. When he looked up, Lois's body floated silently before him, dead long before they had ever reached orbit. Then, at the apex of Superman's sorrow and heartbreak, the nuclear warhead Joker had stolen from the submarine exploded in downtown Metropolis, reducing the city Kal-El so loved to rubble before his very eyes. It was, without exaggeration, the single most horrifying display of sadistic violence and hatred the world had ever seen. Preying upon the most powerful man on the planet simply as a show of force and to derive some terrible sort of grim satisfaction. It certainly does give us a hair-raising glimpse into the chilling psyche of this monstrous clown. Yet, the story of Injustice also raises another line of inquiry for us to consider. If Joker could so easily beat the most powerful man on the planet, is there anyone who could possibly stand against him should he choose to take his horrific talents on the road? We'll be taking up that mystery later in this video, but circling back to the question at hand, when Batman asked the Joker that simple question of why, the clown gave yet another look into his broken, mangled mind.
Why? You need a reason? It's probably the same reason I beat that puppy to death with a kitten last week. When the howling and meowing stops and all you're left with is a mess of fur and blood and brains. Well, you can't beat that warm, glowing feeling inside.
But Batman was not yet satisfied. He still couldn't understand why the Joker would have suddenly veered from his well-trod path of violence and degeneracy. "This has always been about us. Why did you do this to him?" To which the Joker responded coolly,
Every time you and I play, I lose. I was getting a bit bored of always losing. I thought I'd try this on easy mode for a bit, and it was easy. It was as easy as beating a puppy to death with a kitten.
Via this interrogation sequence, we can surmise that at least one of the reasons Joker is obsessed with Batman is that he considers him just about the only person on Earth who can match his intellectual and tactical prowess. Much like an athlete seeking the best players in the world to test their mettle against, the Joker is only interested in going up against those he deems his equals, of which there is only one. So if this crazed madman ever decided that Batman wasn't worth his time or simply became fatigued with the high-octane cat-and-mouse game he and the Bat constantly played at, where would his interests lead him? Well, considering both his chaotic, hateful dispositions and his inherent need to prove himself, he'd likely direct his talents toward toppling the biggest and baddest men and women he could find. But the bigger question is, would he succeed? Well, in Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Endgame arc, not only does the Joker take down the entire rest of the Justice League, but he enslaves them using Joker Venom and forces the whole league to hunt down and capture Batman himself. It's clear by now that the Joker could outsmart, outwit, and outmaneuver just about any foe besides Bruce. But who besides Batman could possibly stand up to this whirling force of chaos and death? Number 4. The Joker's new rival. The DC Universe has no shortage of powerful heroes, but facing the Joker takes more than simply raw power, so who, if anyone, has the combination of the traits needed to take on the Ace of Knaves if Batman was no longer in the picture? Understandably, one might first turn to Bruce's many protégés and partners. Surely a former Robin or Batgirl could take up their mentor's fight and put the Clown Prince of Crime back in his place, right? Indeed, Jason Todd, famously killed by the Joker himself when he was serving as second Robin, was able to capture and subdue the Joker during his debut as the Red Hood. In that case, Todd kept the Joker alive to confront Batman with his greatest failure. Otherwise, the Joker never would have lived to see his next caper. And though we have to give Jason credit where it's due, for he's one of the very few of Batman's partners to take on the Joker alone and succeed, he also had the considerable benefit of being presumed dead. Usually it's the Joker who appears out of nowhere years after allegedly dying, not the other way around. Indeed, Jason's ferocity and determination, not to mention his absolute and undying hatred of the man, would help greatly in a battle against the Joker. But on an even playing field, would it prove to be enough? Well, if it's not one of Bruce Wayne's children, one of his lovers may be best suited for taking down the Joker. In a shocking reveal during the recent Batman Catwoman arc, Catwoman is actually the person who finally kills the Joker in his old age. The two share a complicated history, however, occasionally even being allies against the Bat. But perhaps this history is just what a possible challenger would need in order to have the advantage against the Clown Prince of Crime. And if history is the silver bullet by which the Joker may fall, and it certainly seems so, for who shares more history than the clown than Batman himself, perhaps it's not Batman's lover but Joker's lover who would be best suited to take him down. Consider the remarkable and well-earned redemption arc that Harley Quinn has been on in recent years. It's possible that Harley represents the perfect antidote to the Joker's poisonous ways. There's at least some evidence that she would want the job after all. When Harley realizes that Catwoman was the one to kill the Joker far into the future, she careens her car in anger to Selina's abode, screaming, "You kooky cat, you killed Mr. J. You killed the love of my life before I got to." In terms of the viability of a candidate, Harley Quinn certainly checks a lot of boxes. Not only is she extremely knowledgeable about Joker's whereabouts and inner workings from spending years at his side, but she's perhaps the only person who could ever truly know what the madman was thinking, and thereby predict what he would do next. Of course, there's no assurance that Harley could indeed take down the Joker if he were ever to go on a post-Bat rampage, but she certainly seems to be one of the best candidates out there if push ever came to shove. After all, it seems reasonable to think that it would take a lot on the part of the Joker for Harley to truly ever decide that he needed to be stopped once and for all. Which begs another delicious question for us to ponder, dear viewer. If he ever stopped chasing the Bat, exactly how far would the Joker go in his quest for nihilistic absolutism? Number 5. How dangerous is the Joker? Batman is the whirlpool around which the Ace of Knaves finds himself constantly circling, unable to escape. This fascination, as terrorizing as it may be for Batman and his allies, protects the rest of the world from becoming a playground for the Joker's most vile predispositions. Batman is, for all intents and purposes, the shiny object that the Joker simply can't bring himself to ignore. The flame that the Joker's moth simply can't turn away from, being pulled back again and again only to find defeat and imprisonment at the hands of the Bat. But if the Joker was able to wrest his atrophied brain from the Bat and direct his inner anguish at the rest of humanity, just how bad would it be for the rest of us? Well, Joker's long-standing affection for nuclear devices is well known, and certainly not hard to imagine him setting a few stray nukes loose upon major cities across the United States and the world. Indeed, the US wouldn't be the only country in the firing line should the Joker ever leave Gotham for good. Joker also has a penchant for bioweapons, such as his famed Joker toxin, which suffocates its victims by inducing muscular paralysis and leaves a painful grin plastered on the faces of targets as a calling card. Though Joker often uses his signature gas in smaller quantities, if his goals were ever to grow substantially, it's safe to say this biological agent would be extremely easy to proliferate across cities, countries, or even continents. As we've seen before, the Joker enjoys nothing more than causing mass havoc and disarray, and in the past he's even tried to wipe out the entire United Nations in one targeted strike. So, before the nuclear weapons and the massive biological strikes would come out, it's not hard to imagine the Joker wanting to play with his food, so to speak. Not so subtle assassinations of public figures or even entire governing bodies would be rampant, as Joker enjoyed watching the populations panic at the death of their leaders and elected officials. Soon after, Joker grew bored of watching the chaos play out from afar. Only then would he start the decimation of population centers, moving ever onwards until at the end of it all there was no one left to make suffer. Indeed, if the Joker ever divorced his insanity from Batman, it's not hard to imagine the world as we know it coming to a slow, painful close. And speaking of close, check out our video on what happened when the Joker was revealed to be Batman's closest confidant, his butler Alfred Pennyworth.